He built his life on lies, power, and secrecy. But the one person he never expected to expose him was his own child. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the benches, cameras silently rolling from the back, sketch artists already halfway through the outline of the man at the defense table. Sean "Diddy" Combs sat between his attorneys, unmoving, the crisp collar of his designer prison-issue shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest control. Calm, still in charge, or so it seemed. But inside, he was unraveling. He hadn't looked toward the gallery all morning, not when the judge entered, not when the prosecution began their opening argument, and especially not when the young woman in a simple gray blazer was sworn in at the witness stand. His daughter, Evelyn Monroe Combs. She didn't use his last name publicly, hadn't for years. Not since she moved to D.C. for college. Not since the rumors, the lawsuits, the whispers that had followed her everywhere. Until now, she'd kept her silence. For family. For appearances. For herself. But not today. She sat up straight, her eyes scanning the courtroom like she wasn't afraid of any of them. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "Please state your name for the record," said the prosecutor. "Evelyn Monroe Combs," she replied. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Cameras zoomed in from the back. Even Diddy's attorneys exchanged glances. But he still didn't look at her. Maybe he couldn't. The prosecutor leaned forward. "Miss Combs, are you here voluntarily?" "Yes." "Has anyone pressured or coerced you to testify today?" "No." "Why are you here?" Evelyn hesitated. Her gaze shifted, finally, to her father. And for the first time, he looked back, briefly, long enough to see the betrayal in her eyes. "I'm here because the truth matters more than blood." You could hear a pin drop. The judge raised an eyebrow. The defense attorney opened his mouth as if to object, but quickly closed it again. Evelyn continued, "My father always taught me that loyalty is everything, that family protects each other, that silence is a form of strength." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "But what do you do when silence protects something evil?" The prosecutor took a slow breath. "Evelyn, can you tell the court about the incident that occurred in May of last year?" She nodded. "It was a party at the Aspen estate. I wasn't supposed to be there. I came to surprise him for his birthday, but when I arrived, I walked into something I'll never forget." Diddy's jaw tensed. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. Evelyn looked down. There were people. So many people. Women, barely conscious. Men I didn't recognize. Music was blasting from somewhere, but it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt controlled, like a set, like everything had been arranged. The prosecutor remained still. "Did your father know you were there?" "Not at first. I stayed in the shadows. I didn't want him to see me. I knew if he did, I'd never leave that house again." A collective gasp passed through the gallery. "I saw one of his associates, Julius, carry someone into the pool house. She wasn't moving. I followed. That's when I heard the voice, my father's voice. He said," she swallowed, "he said, 'Get her ready. We need her compliant before the senator arrives.'" Reporters scrambled for their laptops. Diddy closed his eyes. The prosecutor stepped closer. "Miss Combs, were you able to leave the house?" "Eventually. I called my mother from a guest room. She arranged a driver." "Did you speak to your father after that night?" Evelyn looked at him one more time. "He texted me a week later, just one message. 'We all do things for power. Don't forget who paid your tuition.'" The judge banged the gavel once, trying to maintain order, but it was too late. Because what Evelyn said next, just before the courtroom recessed, would set the entire nation on fire. "I kept the audio. I recorded it all. And I gave it to the FBI." The courtroom hadn't moved in nearly 10 seconds. It was as if Evelyn's final words, "I gave it to the FBI," had suspended time itself. Sean "Diddy" Combs sat frozen at the defense table. His eyes were wide, his lips slightly parted, his knuckles bone white as he gripped the edge of the table. For a man who had built an empire on unpredictability, on controlling the chaos, this moment had caught him completely off guard. His daughter had detonated a bomb, one he didn't know she had the power to build. Judge Marisol Danner called for an immediate recess, her gavel cracking once, sharp and final. Spectators and press surged to their feet, their murmurs rising into a cacophony of stunned whispers. But Diddy didn't move, not even when his lead attorney, Victor Barnes, leaned close and whispered, We need to talk. Now. He didn't hear him. He was replaying Evelyn's voice in his head, not the one on the stand, but the one from years ago. Small, soft. Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. That version of her was long gone. Back in the witness waiting room, Evelyn sat alone. The door was guarded by 2 federal marshals. She had requested isolation. She didn't want anyone, especially not her father's legal team, near her until the tapes were formally submitted into evidence. She stared at the cheap water bottle in her hands. It trembled slightly, but she didn't. I did the right thing, she whispered to herself. I did. Still, there was a knot in her chest that no amount of courage could untangle. She had turned on her father, the man who had raised her, protected her, twisted as it was, but also the man who had done things she could no longer justify, not after Aspen, not after what she saw. In chambers, the prosecution team wasted no time. We've reviewed the material she submitted 3 weeks ago, said ADA Leonard Kim, placing a sealed evidence bag on the table. 6 audio files, 4 video clips, metadata intact, no sign of manipulation. She recorded them herself over a span of 6 months. Judge Danner raised an eyebrow. And you're only bringing this forward now? She insisted we wait until she testified, Leonard replied. She feared obstruction. She feared him. On the other side of the room, Victor Barnes sat tense, arms crossed. We demand a full chain of custody review. This material can't be admitted without due scrutiny. Agreed, said the judge. But if it holds, it changes everything. That night, the media erupted. Headlines exploded across every screen. Diddy's daughter, secret recordings could turn trial. We all do things for power. Combs' family implodes in court. From music mogul to defendant, Diddy faces his own blood. Social media went into a frenzy. Hashtags like "the story she hid" and "Diddy tapes" trended globally. News anchors speculated on what the recordings might contain. Pundits debated Evelyn's motives. Was it justice, revenge, or something deeper? Inside his holding cell that night, Diddy lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't thinking about lawyers, or trial strategy, or even the music empire he once ruled. He was thinking about her. She had the tapes, this whole time. I taught her to be sharp, careful, strong, and she used it all, against me. He wanted to be angry, furious, but mostly he felt cold, because he knew exactly which night she recorded, and exactly what he said. And if she handed over the pool house audio, he didn't finish the thought. Because some truths don't echo in your mind. They bury you. The next morning, Manhattan Criminal Court was under siege. News vans stretched around the block. Protesters, fans, and curiosity seekers lined the sidewalk. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Every seat filled, every breath held. The judge entered. Gavel. Silence. Today, Judge Danner said, we will address the motion to admit newly submitted audio recordings into evidence. Sean Combs looked smaller. His eyes were sunken. His usual presence, the untouchable magnetism that had once commanded record labels, fashion lines, and sold-out arenas, was fading beneath the weight of consequence. He leaned toward his attorney. Do not let them play that tape, he whispered, barely audible. Victor Barnes nodded once, already rising. Your Honor, Barnes began, we object to the admission of these recordings on the grounds of entrapment, lack of verified chain of custody, and potential witness bias. The judge raised a hand. Noted. However, all submitted materials have been reviewed under seal. The recordings are admissible. The jury will hear them. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Across the aisle, Evelyn Monroe Combs sat in the gallery. No expression, no movement, just eyes locked on the defense table. A large monitor was wheeled in front of the jury. The lights dimmed. The first recording began. It was grainy, slightly muffled. Background chatter, music, and then his voice. Diddy. Clear, commanding. She's too alert. Tell security to cut her drink half of what we gave the last one. I want her mellow, not drooling. She needs to smile for the senator. The courtroom went still. One of the jurors blinked rapidly, leaning back. Phones collected? Yes, sir. Good. Make sure the cameras are rolling. We need leverage. The clip ended. Diddy's face twitched. Victor Barnes stood. This is out of context. My client, Mr. Barnes, the judge interrupted. You'll have the opportunity for rebuttal. Sit down. The prosecutor rose slowly. That audio, ADA Leonard Kim said, was captured on the night of May 16th at the Aspen property. Ms. Combs submitted it along with GPS metadata, timestamps, and corroborating testimony from 2 former staff members. He clicked a remote. The second clip began. This one was clearer. Nobody leaves until I say they do. If she tries, she's done. You understand me? There was a pause, then laughter, his laughter. They always beg the next morning, but by then, it's handled. One juror covered her mouth. Diddy sank deeper into his seat. Inside his mind, it was chaos. They have it. They have the Aspen night. They know. They heard. Evelyn was there. She recorded it. She turned on me. She was watching, like a stranger. His thoughts blurred, but one detail stayed sharp. He had said those words. Every single one. And they were no longer secrets. Back in the gallery, Evelyn felt her heart race, but not from fear, from release. I told the truth. Finally. And they heard it. The prosecutor turned back to the judge. The prosecution moves to admit the remaining 4 audio files sequentially over the next sessions. We request continuation of Miss Combs's direct testimony tomorrow morning. Judge Danner nodded. Granted. Court is adjourned for today. As the gavel fell, Diddy looked up, for the first time, in Evelyn's direction. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She just watched. Because for once, he was the one being watched. The next day began with a storm, both outside the courthouse and inside it. Rain hammered the windows, umbrellas snapped in the wind. But inside, the real storm gathered in the silence of the courtroom, thick and electric. Diddy didn't sleep the night before, not really. Not after hearing his own voice say those things. Not after watching the jury look at him like a stranger, like a monster. They weren't supposed to hear that. None of them were, especially not her. He sat hunched slightly, hands folded, jaw tight. His lawyers whispered strategies, motions, technical defenses. He heard none of it, because he knew what came next. Evelyn Monroe Combs returned to the stand. She looked tired, but steady. The prosecutor, Leonard Kim, adjusted his notes. Miss Combs, he began, are you aware that your recordings are now part of the official evidence? Yes, she said, voice clear. I am. Were you present during the events referenced in those recordings? She paused. Some, yes. Others I captured through audio systems he didn't know I'd placed. The judge raised an eyebrow. Miss Combs, clarify, are you saying you installed surveillance devices? Yes, Your Honor, Evelyn said without blinking. Small ones, in rooms I was told to avoid. Diddy's fingers twitched. She continued. You used to call them privacy zones. Rooms no one was allowed in. That's where I heard the worst things. The gallery stirred. ADA Kim nodded. Let's focus on one in particular, June 11th, New York residence. You submitted a clip labeled Studio Room A. Yes. Would you describe what you heard? Evelyn closed her eyes for a second, just one. There were 2 men. One was Julius, his head of security. The other, I believe, was a record executive. They were discussing a guest who had tried to leave a party early. The prosecutor clicked the remote. The room filled with static, then clarity. She's a liability. You want me to take care of it? No, not yet. Give her a car, send her home, then follow her. I want everything. Phone, messages, who she talks to. She squeaks, she's done. Another voice laughed. You're getting paranoid. I'm getting smart. Nobody buries me, I bury them first. A long, tense silence filled the courtroom. Victor Barnes stood, his voice sharp. Your Honor, again, we object to the use of illegally obtained surveillance. She was in her own home. The judge cut him off. Overruled. On the defense bench, Diddy sat absolutely still, but inside, the cracks deepened. They're not just hearing rumors now, they're hearing proof. I told Julius to follow her. I told him to dig. I forgot Evelyn was there that weekend. I forgot she heard it. He glanced sideways, hoping, still, for some hint of softness in her. A flicker of doubt, something he could rebuild. But Evelyn didn't look back. ADA Kim stepped closer. Miss Combs, why did you start recording him? Evelyn's voice caught, just briefly. Then, because I didn't recognize him anymore. Because I was afraid of what he'd become. Because I knew, if something ever happened to me, nobody would believe it unless they heard it from him. You could hear someone in the gallery sniffle. And for the first time, the judge's voice softened. Do you feel safe now? Evelyn answered after a beat. I feel visible, which is something power always tries to erase. As the session ended, Judge Danner ordered a special hearing for the next morning, when the final recording would be played. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. Because the last file Evelyn submitted was labeled only one word: confession. There was no crowd outside the courthouse that morning. No protest signs, no cheering fans. Just a line of silent reporters and one long black government SUV parked at the curb. Inside, the courtroom was unusually quiet. The jury didn't whisper. The spectators barely shifted in their seats. Everyone knew what today was: the final tape. Court is now in session, Judge Danner announced. The defense looked hollowed out. Victor Barnes flipped through his notes without seeing them. Diddy hadn't said a word since sunrise. He hadn't touched his breakfast tray, hadn't looked in a mirror. He already knew what he'd said. ADA Leonard Kim stood slowly, a small remote in his hand. Your Honor, the prosecution respectfully requests permission to play Exhibit 47, a voice memo recorded by the witness, Evelyn Monroe Combs, on the night of June 18th. The judge nodded. Proceed. The lights dimmed. The audio clicked on. At first, nothing, just the hum of an expensive sound system, ice clinking in a glass, a long exhale, and then his voice. You know what I learned, Evie? You can build anything if you control the silence. You could hear a chair creak, maybe hers. People always talk about money or fame, but power? Real power? That's knowing they're too scared to speak. Silence. Then again. Every time someone tried to leave, I reminded them why they stayed. You think that makes me a villain? No, it makes me the architect. This whole system, labels, clubs, media, all of it, was built to protect people like me, until you. Evelyn's voice, faint. What does that mean? It means I let you see too much. And then, the worst part. But you're smart. You'll keep quiet. You're still mine. Blood doesn't betray blood. Click. Silence. And then the tape looped back to the start. Nobody moved. The jury stared at him, eyes hard, unmoving. The judge adjusted her glasses. Mr. Barnes, any objection? Victor Barnes was silent. Very well, this court finds Exhibit 47 admitted. On the stand, Evelyn looked pale but composed. She hadn't flinched when her father's voice filled the room. She had heard that recording 100 times, maybe more. What she hadn't heard, until now, was the quiet afterward. No excuses, no applause, no manipulation. Just silence. Diddy sat still, but something in him gave way. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight, and finally looked up. At her. And for the first time since this trial began, Evelyn saw not the mogul, not the empire builder, not the monster. Just a man. A father. And he looked afraid. She kept it. She really kept it. All this time. I made her, I shaped her, I taught her power, and she used it better than I ever did. The judge addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. Until then, this court stands in recess. Gavel. But nobody moved. As the courtroom emptied, Evelyn stepped off the stand.